Our next guest is Cara DelTufo from Dana-Farber, where she's Associate General Counsel. And as you know already, we're big fans of Dana-Farber on this side of the table.
We're really glad to hear that.
That's great. It's a wonderful hospital institution, whatever it is. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do for Dana-Farber?
So I'm Associate General Counsel at Dana-Farber. I handle most of our labor and employment matters as well as litigation matters. So I primarily work with our Human Resources Department and really just advise them on sort of policies, day-to-day employment issues that come up. And recently I've had the pleasure of being involved in some of Dana-Farber's expansion efforts. We've been forming Dana-Farber Community Cancer Care. And so we've opened a number of physician practices throughout the state so that patients can sort of quickly come in and see a physician for their treatment without sort of having to come into the hospital. And so I got to play a very small part in some of those contracts as they were sort of planning what the employees would look like and how we'd be employing them.
So do you negotiate a lot of the contracts too? You work closely with HR because obviously some of the people you bring in are renowned, and so there are a lot of nuances, correct?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And that's something that the Office of General Counsel is very interested in. It's challenging at times because you have very talented researchers and doctors from all over the world that are coming here, and you want to be able to make them a competitive offer. At the same time, we're a nonprofit, and as I like to say to people, you should feel very confident that when you give to the Jimmy Fund, it's all going to the Jimmy Fund. So we have a very slim operating margin. So we're not able to offer, some of the bigger salaries that you might see across the country at other institutions. So that's sort of one of the challenges.
As I told you before, I'm on in full disclosure, the Leadership Council of Dana-Farber, and I know from meetings, some of the doctors that come in, you've got a lot of young people, which is great, that come and bring fresh ideas and working very collaboratively.
Yeah, we're really fortunate, and we're opening an entirely new research building at Dana-Farber, and that hopefully is going to be able to attract a lot of researchers from around the country with our lab space. I mean, that's one of the things that we need to be competitive about, is making sure it comes down to lab space. And a lot of times a contract will have the square footage. How many square feet of lab space is this researcher or doctor going to have to do their work? 50% of what we do is research. So that's very important, when we're talking to candidates.
Have you always been sort of doing in-house counsel for, let's say, medical institutions?
No, this was pretty new to me, actually. I started out at two law firms, Holland and Knight, and then went on to what is now Hirsch Roberts Weinstein, and previously was Sullivan Weinstein and McQuay. And I primarily had focused on working with colleges and universities. I really enjoyed sort of, again, identifying with that academic mission, which I think we have at Dana-Farber too. And in the course of working at Hirsch Roberts Weinstein, got to know Dana-Farber a little bit. They were my client. I was doing some work for them. And so I really got to know them for a few years before I ended up working for them.
The other thing is what you mentioned is you had experience in dealing, I think the Dana-Farber and working with not only in healthcare, but as particular type of facility and hospital and all the nuances, you really need to have a special background. And it's great to be able to, and I think ironically, because I'm in the business, I can tell you that a lot of clients like to hire their attorneys because at least they understand. It's like Jeff and I always say, sort of like in my business, temporary business, dating before you get married. You had a chance to get to know them a little bit before you say, okay, will you marry me and come over and be part of our group?
That's right, yeah. And I think one of the things that especially newer attorneys don't realize is that there's so many different ways to work with and advise a client. And style matters so much. It isn't just about how great an attorney you may or may not be. It's how your style works with the client. Maybe that's part of being a good attorney, is understanding that.
Right.
But I think that was very important, that we had a very similar style in terms of the way that I advised the client and the advice that they were looking for.